Right, good evening. I'm Dr. Edward Karshner, professor of English, and as I like to say, I'm the self-proclaimed creative writing coordinator. And as long as they don't pay me, I can say whatever I want. So, yes, that's right, and the certificate. So welcome to the first ever RMU Arts and Humanities Sigma Tau Delta Joint Fall Creative Writing Showcase and National Novel Writing Month reading. We are calling this the Fall Storytellers Cafe, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But first I'd like to say a little bit about how we got here. Creative writing has always been an important part of the identity of the English program. Really, when I started here, it was the emphasis on critical reading and writing and getting students to write for readers and read like writers that appealed to me. Formerly, the person who would be standing here before his retirement last year was Dr. John Lawson, who was the founding father of RMU's creative writing course of study. He believed that creative writing offered a respite to the more vocational focused majors, and he saw this reading as a way to celebrate that exploration of self and the world as students learn to work in the world. What's unique about creative writing at RMU is that it isn't an English-only phenomenon. These courses bring together students from across campus. This year, besides the usual suspects of English and education majors, the creative writing class had students from advertising, interdisciplinary studies, cybersecurity, and UX/UI, to name a few. And as I told my class last year when I attended this event hosted by Dr. John Lawson, the non-English folks were sports management. So it just goes to show you that the storytelling impulse at RMU is strong with the students. And that maybe Dr. Lawson was right. We need an outlet to tell our stories. In fact, Dr. Lawson was so committed to this point of view that he developed a major called professional writing that explored where creative writing could be used professionally and applied those skills not just to poems and stories, but advertising, podcasting, newsletter writing, anywhere creative writing could be used to tell a story to an audience. Since that moment, which was only a year ago, that vision has been re-seen as two certificates, creative writing and writing in the workplace. So we are still committed to the idea of telling our stories and helping students tell their own stories. So that's why we're here at the Storytellers Cafe, a showcase of the creative talent that is evenly distributed across RMU. This year, we have wanted to bring together as many of the storytellers we worked with this semester as possible. That's why we joined up with the Sigmas, who are the driving force behind the National Novel Writing Month at RMU. Tonight also marks the first time the fall reading is not just with the Introduction to Creative Writing class, but includes the other creative writing certificate course being offered this semester, Storytelling for Multimedia. And before I go any further, I'd like to introduce my colleague, award-winning writer, Professor Megan Lucas, who is teaching that class. Professor Lucas.
This semester, I had the pleasure of teaching English 2150, which is storytelling for multimedia. And over the course of the last 3 months, these writers have discovered and developed their powers of storytelling through the study of techniques like character development, structure, and dialogue, and practiced by crafting drafts in 6 different genres, including creative nonfiction, short fiction, podcasting, audio storytelling, commercials, and screenwriting. It's not an easy class. For their final project, they will develop one of those drafts into a produced or publishable artifact. And I think tonight you're going to hear a couple of those. If you're interested in storytelling, this class is offered every other fall. Next fall, I'll be teaching fiction, which along with the storytelling class and Dr. Karshner's creative nonfiction and intro to creative writing class makes up our creative writing certificate, which you do not have to be an English major to pursue, but is a terrific way to learn to write your story.
Like I said, this is a celebration of all of the writers at RMU across campus, but I would like to take just a minute to brag about my students in the English 3020 Introduction to Creative Writing course. This semester, these students have worked through the writing process from premise to publication, which I stole from Professor Lucas. They have drafted both creative nonfiction, fiction, workshopped those pieces, revised, and are now, as part of their final exam, which will be during final exam week, Dr. Pinson, yes, preparing a submission portfolio. They have worked hard, and I'm so very proud of these students, and I'm excited for them to share their work with you. So, without further ado, let's introduce tonight's readers. So, first up will be Lucas Kane, and then Cassidy Norton. Lucas?
We're about the same height. Hello, everybody. My name is Lucas Kane, and I will be reading a piece from Professor Megan Lucas's storytelling through multimedia class. I will be reading my half of my audio story, which was written, of course, to be read out loud. It is titled "The Poet of Dimerick." Have you heard the tale? The tale of the man whose head is veiled within a magical shadow? Have you seen his visage in your window, his word in your dreams? He is the weaver of fate, it seems, to those whom his words meet. For each of them now lie beneath 6 feet. If you are of talent, if your wits are thick, make yourself weary of the poet of Dimerick. It is a wet yet vibrant autumn evening when I receive the long-anticipated letter that I have been accepted into the University of Dimerick. I am ecstatic. I saw the stagecoach coming from yards behind the hill, sitting in desperation for the small chance that my letter would have arrived. I tell my mother and father at once, who embrace me with wide arms, exclaiming to me, "Oh, our little prodigy, you have made us proud beyond the doubt of the devil." I had begun to doubt my acceptance into the University of Dimerick. It's the best school that I know about, after all, the most prestigious place of education this side of Centrum, but my wildest dreams seem to be becoming a reality. I live in a small village in Hollow City, a quaint and pleasant place called Winter Hollow. I plan to bring a name to my home with me on my journey to greatness. It has now come the day that I must part. It is a sunny yet bitterly cold day today, and my family and friends are lining the streets to see me off. I wave enthusiastically to them, several tears seeping out of my eyes as I step onto the small stagecoach to take me to Dimerick. The trip to Dimerick is long, nearly 100 miles, but I do not doubt for a second that I want to leave my home in search of something greater. I step on the coach with one final wave, feeling a thick, bittersweet wash over me. The wheels begin to move following the clopping of hooves. Now I can no longer look back. As my trip begins, a sadness overtakes my joy. It now sinks in that I'm leaving my home of 18 years, following my own ambition into the woods and seeing where it takes me. I take a deep breath and try to remember a poem my grandfather used to read to me before he passed. He would read it to me every time I found myself stuck in my studies, wondering why I chose the life of a scholar. It goes as follows. A boy finds a flower in the rough, tired rubble and smoke and snuff. An anemone blue as a summer sky sprouted amongst the burned rye. The sky turned a hopeless gray from rallied souls thrown astray. Come April showers of blood, May's flowers shall drown in mud. Save a lone survivor's optimism. No more is the ancient schism. Without wrong, without plight, there can only be peace, there can only be light. Poetry has always been an escape for me. To bask in its profound meanings and experiences that could not be described in any other way is uniquely transcendental. After nearly a whole day of traveling, the driver and I take the night to rest at a nearby inn within Fall Hollow. We enter the inn right after dark. I pass the counterman some coin for a key. "You look like you're from Winter Hollow, my boy. What brings you to Fall?" the counterman asks me, as he turns to grab me a room key. "Surely it isn't the weather." "No, sir," I reply. "I'm off to Dimerick to attend the University of Dimerick." "The University of Dimerick? What a special boy you are. You're lucky to ever get the chance to visit Dimerick, no less study there." "And you're taking the route through the Prodigal Forest?" The counterman seems flabbergasted. He refrains from handing me my key as if he does not want to lose my attention. "I am, sir," I say. "Well, I must tell you to beware. Haven't you heard who stalks the forest surrounding Dimerick?" "Yes, I do know," I say, "but I am prepared." "Are you sure, boy?" asks the counterman. "There is no way to prepare for an encounter with the poet of Dimerick. Haven't you heard the old rhyme?" "The poet of Dimerick?" I say, puzzled. Surprisingly, I have not heard of this individual before. Rumors say that he was once a great poet from Dimerick who made a deal with the devil to become the best writer in all the land. The devil granted him the ability to create poems that would come true. Any word he speaks becomes reality. Now, he roams the forest in search of inspiration and of talented young minds like he once was. I do not believe in superstitions, I say, so please give me my room key and I shall be on my way. I find my small room on the 3rd floor of the building and do a small bit of reading by lantern light before drifting off to sleep. All is peaceful. As I'm nearly drifted off to sleep, I hear a knock. It awakes me, but I pay no mind. Surely it's just a traveler finding a room at late night. But the knock comes again and again. This time I am compelled to haul myself out of the comfort of my bed and check the door. But there's no one outside. I get back into the bed, and soon I realize that the knock was not coming from my door, but instead from my window. From the shadow of the moonlight through my thin curtains, I see a silhouette. A figure, with something large on its head, perhaps a hat. I'm momentarily petrified. But as soon I realize it's surely nothing but a tree, I return to the covers and coax my mind back to rest. Thank you very much.
Hello, I am Cassidy Norton, and today I will be reading to you 2 poems and an excerpt from my fiction piece. My first poem is titled Little Tree. It was one of the first poems I ever wrote when I was back in 7th grade, and I have obviously rewritten it so that it's a little bit more mature. Little Tree. Oh, little tree, you look so small. I wonder if you'll grow at all. If your trunk will grow so round and leaves so green stay all year round. Right now you need support to stand. A small thing like you is none too grand. No branches but a few small sticks. I wonder if you'll survive life's kicks. The land is barren, the hill is low, and here you sit as your branches blow. Heartless sun, vengeful sky. O little tree, stay safe, stay dry. Years have passed and you have grown. My little tree, strong as stone. Your branches large and reaching high. I think I'd feel like I could fly. I wonder how many nights you've seen, and mornings where dewdrops left a sheen. I wonder if I could grow so strong, and I hope it will take half as long. And then my fiction piece is titled When We Drained Lake Powell. We had to choose a newspaper thing online and do what if, so mine was what if we actually drained the lake. When the government first decided to let Lake Powell dry up in favor of filling Lake Med, it was clear how dire circumstances were getting. The drought hadn't helped us fill the lakes up. In fact, people were starting to speculate that the lakes would never fill up again. Too many people were taking water, and not enough rain fell to replenish them. So the plan was to allow Lake Med to fill first, cut paths into the rock so the rock could bypass the Glen Canyon Dam. The idea meant that they would be letting Lake Powell dry. It took a few years, and they tried to regulate the flow to help keep Lake Powell afloat. But it got too low. Recreational activities on the water had to be halted. Collegiate teams couldn't practice anymore. The Native Americans had been protesting the draining of the lake ever since the first proposal was made public. They started to panic when the rock started to show, protesting in earnest like they were desperate for the rock to be covered again. The Native American elders were near hysterics, trying to tell the government that if the water didn't get high enough, then some great evil would be unleashed. We should have listened to them. When the large rock started to reveal itself in the middle of the lake, like an island emerging from the ocean's depths, people weren't worried. Dirt covered the thing, but after the dirt dried and cracked and was washed away by a storm, we could see stone appearing. And as the water kept getting lower, and the mud kept falling out, and the stone kept showing underneath, we could tell this wasn't just some random canyon stone, that it showed up everywhere in the region, because this stone had been carved. So when the giant statue of a snake came rising out of the ever-dwindling water, people thought it was just some long-lost historical find. They put my team in charge of finding out what it was. Myths aren't supposed to exist. That is all you get. And then my last piece that I will be reading to you is my favorite poem that I've ever written so far. It's titled I Had a Dream That I Could Fly, and yes, I did actually have a dream that I could fly. I remember a dream where I could fly, with dragon wings and an eagle's eye. I remember a shadow that fell so grand, over the mountains and across desert sands. I remember the clouds that felt so sweet, and the taste of the sun, the fire, the heat. I remember the night when I woke from my sleep, how tired I was, how my arms felt weak. Because staying up high, so far away, leaves you exhausted, fatigued, astray. The clouds that were cool and the sun that was bright turned piercing and chilling and lost all its light. I had a dream, so long ago, of a creature with wings and a chest that would glow. I had a dream of a dying star who clashed with itself, trying too hard. I had a dream of being too bold and watched as a being forgot what to hold. I had a dream that I could fly and learned that it's hard to touch the sky.
I had said this in the workshop, but when Cassidy, because folk horror that's what I write, and when Cassidy turned in her story, it was the most complete, incomplete story I had ever seen in my entire life. And I know that probably sounds weird, but when you write folk horror, there's a lot of rambling to try to get to the point and try to figure out like what you're really up to. And it was just all there, and it was really something. So thank you, Cassie. That was really great. Our next two readers will be Caitlin Barnes and Milena Pongratz.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm not in any creative writing class, but I did join the writing challenge this month that the sororities did. So I wrote a series of 12 poems this month. They weren't all from this month, nor from this year, but I'm gonna read 3 of my favorites from my collection. The first one's called Dear Dad. I just wanna preface that these are a little sad, so don't let that catch you off guard. Dear Dad, I miss you a lot. I miss the way your hand felt between mine when I would ask you to be there for me. I miss our long talks in the car, but those talks have become one-word sentences. I don't know you anymore, and you don't know me. What happened to the dad who couldn't wait to see his daughter get off the bus every day after school or walk her home from school? I miss the dad who got things off the top shelf of my closet because I was not yet tall enough to reach them on my own. Well, I have grown 5 inches in the past 2 years. I can now reach the stuff on the top shelf because there's no one else to do it for me. I get out of my car by myself after school, not expecting you to be there for me. I keep secrets that I normally wouldn't because you don't understand and because you'd have to be there to get it. I hate not seeing you every day, and I miss you with everything in my heart. The second poem I'm reading is called Muscle Memory. They were my first love, now they are gone, just like that. I've tried to rid myself of her body. My mind wants so desperately to move on, but how can I'm gonna start over. This has a curse word in it. I'd like everyone to be prepared for this curse word. I'm gonna start over. They were my first love, now they are gone, just like that. I've tried to rid myself of her body. My mind wants so desperately to move on, but how can I be expected to do that when they're fucking my best friend? But they are a parasite in my brain, corrupting my thoughts and emotions. I have no control over what I think. Kathy told me to focus on things I control, and I want so bad to be able to control this. So I can focus on getting through the thoughts, so I can focus on getting the thoughts of her out of my head. The muscle memory of hers, of her hands in mine, how can someone just forget that feeling, the feeling of that first person? And then the third poem, the last one I'll be reading, is called After Her/You. After her, I thought I'd never feel the same, until one weekend I saw a girl differently. Now it's her I want. After her, I couldn't move my body. It was heavy. She lifted the weight off my back. She made me feel again. You are in my past, she is in my present. I have learned after her. I will do better than her. I am so much happier after her. She makes me feel so heard. I don't have to pretend for her or put on a show. I can be me. After her, I lost myself. Then I found them again. After her, I learned to love myself so I can love her. She is the new fairy tale in my mind. She takes up all my thoughts that you previously did. I am finally free of you. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Milena. I'm a senior English major. I'm in Dr. Karshner's creative writing class right now, but this is a creative nonfiction piece called The First Time I Saw My Future that I wrote just for fun. The first time I saw my future was on the dance floor at my cousin's wedding. In that bright, glimmering room, things felt bleak. I told myself I didn't like weddings, that I'd never have one, but all that laughter and dancing and love in one place made it hard to tamp down my desire. The newlyweds skipped into the room at the start of the reception. The bride wore a shimmering ball gown and laughed as she nearly tripped over its layers of tulle. Still, the dress suited her. I decided that if I were to get married, I'd wear a flowing dress that lent itself to dancing, and I'd want the ceremony to be outside. I'd want to hear birds calling and see sunlight touching the face across from me as we said I do. We could hold wildflower bouquets and serve everyone on mismatched glassware. Everything could be mismatched and thrifted, even the tables and chairs. Although we wouldn't have to collect very many, there'd be about 3 guests, at least on my side of the aisle. My eyes followed the bride and groom as they made their way to each table, giving hugs and thank yous to 100 people. About 40 of them were my relatives. They gave their biggest smiles and warmest wishes, the kind that were reserved for marriage. All that love would be heartwarming if it wasn't conditional. Instead, it made my chest ache. I knew I'd never be on the receiving end of those congratulations, and no one would shed a tear when I walked down the aisle, at least not for the right reasons. I shifted my attention. It would definitely be more enjoyable to watch drunk people try to line dance. But the dance floor was empty except for one couple. They suited each other perfectly. They both had close cropped hair, one's leaning towards salt and the other's closer to pepper. They wore sundresses, one green and one blue with florals and Birkenstocks. They held each other close, belly to belly, and swayed to the music, slowly gliding across the empty floor. Toward the end of the song, they pressed their foreheads together. They lingered there as the soft piano faded into the guitar riff at the beginning of Mr. Brightside. They pulled away from each other, and the woman in the green dress started to do an offbeat version of the mashed potato. Her partner laughed until she was red in the face and nearly doubled over. I watched them a little too closely for the rest of the night. If my family said anything about the 2 women dancing their hearts out in the open in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, I didn't hear it. I fell back into my daydream, but this time it extended beyond the first dance at my wedding. So the relatives that no longer look in my direction and the time when my aunt told me, "I pray that you'll come back to normal," over Thanksgiving dinner barely mattered in that moment. Because I knew for the first time that I could live a full life, and I could grow old, and it would all be very normal. I thought about the times when I could put my arms around someone in public or in private, and it wouldn't be a calculated act of defiance, it would just be love. Thank you.
Not only is Milena a triple threat, she can do poetry, CNF, and fiction, but she was also the one who coordinated the National Novel Writing Month for the Sigmas, and so thank you very much. And she's also, because, like I said, because now that I'm the coordinator, she is my programming assistant. So thank you, Milena. You did a great job. Our next 2 readers will be Michaela Harvey and Philip Shifter.
Hi, everyone. So today I'm going to be reading a creative nonfiction piece that I wrote for Dr. Karshner's creative writing class. It's called A Really Shitty Situation. We had to write about an animal encounter, so if that's any indication. One Thursday afternoon, I was walking back to my dorm from my British Literature 1 class. Hi, Dr. Pambukian. I was exhausted, but I felt accomplished knowing that I survived yet another day of constant college chaos. I walked under one of the million trees on campus, and I felt something drop on my shoulder and trickle down my coat. The sky was overcast that day, so I thought it was just like a rogue raindrop or 2. Apparently, I must have skipped the forecast that day, because it was cloudy with a 100% chance of bird poop. I lifted my hand, prepared to wipe the raindrops away, and peered down at a mixed mess of white and black in absolute horror. When it comes to college life, every day is a brand new pile of checklists to complete. Wake up at the crack of dawn, make yourself look semi-presentable, run to class, hyperventilate through exams, start on homework, do more homework, and, oh, did I forget the homework? Yeah, that's a pretty important part too. Rinse and repeat. My first semester of college was easily my worst. I struggled with getting stabbed in the back by people I considered close friends at the time and managing haywire anxiety that left me pulling all-nighters like it was my career. I was an only child raised in the small town of Scottsdale, PA, and going to college was my first ever opportunity to break out of my shell and finally become the person I've dreamed of being my entire life. I constantly struggled with being the local yes woman. I eventually reached a point where I didn't live my life for myself anymore. I lived it to make everybody else's lives easier. Once I moved into college, I made moves to live for myself and be the most self-sufficient I could possibly be. So in this situation, I did what any mature, self-sufficient college student would do. I called my mom. As I struggled to get my too heavy backpack off without giving it a garnish of bird poop, a much harder task than I think anyone would imagine, my mom laughed and told me that I must be very lucky today because the chances of getting pooped on by a bird are basically 1 in a million. Actually, it's more like 1 in 5 million. Getting pooped on by a bird is lucky simply because it's so unlikely to happen. Ask anyone. Birds always go where people don't. But there's also a bunch of spiritual meanings to it that often go overlooked. This long-standing superstition was developed in Russia, where getting pooped on by a bird has often been viewed as a renewal process. Even though bird poop itself is far from clean, please do not research what bird poop is made of while eating. I'm speaking from experience. Russians see it as a form of spiritual cleansing as well, freeing the person from their negative attachments and energies. And trust me, as soon as my mom gave me the step-by-step process on how to safely wash my jacket and not ruin it, that bird poop was cleaned off as soon as possible. I've lost a lot of friends, quote unquote, from washing my coat that day, or since washing my coat that day. But in the meantime, I've gained some irreplaceable relationships in my life that I hope to hold on to for the rest of my life. I've also created some of my fondest new memories at ungodly hours of the morning while hopped up on too much caffeine and not enough shits to give, like going on ill-advised sheets runs and a pain that we will all likely still be talking about in our wedding toasts and acceptance speeches, screaming about 10-page papers about Flannery O'Connor. Though getting pooped on by a bird was by far the most unorthodox keep-going sign that I've ever received in my life, it was reassuring nonetheless. Even though I've never been too far away from home, RMU has allowed me to, no pun intended, spread my wings more than that tiny southwestern Pennsylvania town of Scottsdale ever could. RMU has become my home without even realizing it. In the end, I've learned that luck doesn't come from bird poop. It comes through the opportunities to meet strangers that become your family in the blink of an eye. Now, I add 2 more things to mark off on my daily checklist. Always be careful while walking under trees, and never forget that as long as you're around those who love you, even when you don't always love yourself, you are exactly where you need to be.
Hello, so my name is Philip Shifter, for anyone that doesn't know me. I am actually reading my piece that I also wrote for Dr. Karshner's class, but not for the fiction class or for like anything like that. It's actually for my study of literature class, and it's a book review that I wrote. To give a quick trigger warning, unlike some professors, this does discuss like a lot of sexually explicit content. So, like, if you're not okay with that, like, just be ill-advised in advance. So the book review is titled, "I Read Smut for the Plot." So most of the books that I used to read fell into the romance category. I used to love the idea of a man sweeping me off my feet and that true love was out there for me somewhere. Fast forward through COVID, and my taste changed to a slightly more sexual nature. Instead of just romance, I now gravitate towards novels that fall under the category of smut. This is not unlike what a majority of book readers, at least the ones I know of off of TikTok, are feeling. They are gravitating away from the books that are fun little romance novels into full-blown novels where the characters feel more adult and feel real with all the smut that's in them. This new type of reading still has stories in it, and smut isn't even something new, but these stories have become a new escape from reality, at least for me, that is. One book that drew my attention when I was searching out is The Devil's Mark by Lark Taylor. Taylor is a woman from southern England who, according to Goodreads, loves nothing more than a happily ever after, especially if there's a good plot and a hefty amount of spice. Taylor took the phrase, write what you love to heart when writing her novel Devil's Mark. The story follows Oscar, who is a gay man in England, who was horribly abused by his last boyfriend to the point that he had to actually testify against him because he almost murdered him. He eventually is convinced by his friend to go out after a year, and he meets Cal. Cal is this 6'3" demon man who's hunky as hell, and he's actually the son of Lucifer. Oscar laments before he even enters the club to see him and says, "Why did I listen to you? I could be curled up on my sofa with a tub of Ben & Jerry's watching Lucifer." When Cal finally sees Oscar, Cal thinks that he never would have found someone that he would call his, let alone today. When Cal sees Oscar, he has the thought, "As I turned, I swear time slowed down." His eyes lifted to meet mine and everything stopped. He knew instantly that he needed Oscar in a way that was different than a hookup. He needed Oscar to be his. As their night goes on, Oscar and him get a little freaky. I'll spare you the details. And Cal has this thought. "Everything in me stilled. I spent many lifetimes in hell making humans beg for mercy, and their entreaties left me indifferent. But one small whimper from Oscar had me ready to burn down the world for him." Slight spoiler warning here, Oscar had a panic attack because of his trauma, which it wasn't a surprise, but Cal wanted to make sure that Oscar got home safe, so he kind of stalked him home. Cal used his wings, because of course he has wings, he's a demon, and he beat Oscar home. While he makes it there, he sees Oscar having a panic attack in his sleep, so he obviously breaks in and tries to comfort him. Cal does something that he never thought he would do. He marks Oscar, which this was their way of claiming them. This book isn't only about the passionate sex that could happen, it has an overarching found family trope. The found family trope is defined by Meg Ratty of Emerson College as a plot device that explores the bond of unrelated friends that come together to form their own family. Oscar does not have many people in his life after his abusive ex laid his hands on him. He has his best friend Bailey and a sister that he pushed away. Cal only has his brothers since they shut everyone else out because of their time in hell and their lineage. Oscar becomes so enveloped within Cal's family that despite this, giving him a family that he actually cares about. Not only does this book have a cute found family trope, it's gay, obviously. This is something that's usually hard to find within the smut book community, but has been growing immensely since the pandemic of 2020. This also helps with the author herself being bisexual. Once again, according to Goodreads, I have no information on this, so she has her own insider information. For me personally, I loved this book. As a gay man, the only thing that I want out of life is to find a gay, hunky man who is completely and utterly devoted to me. All jokes aside, the idea that someone who is as broken as Oscar can still find love in a family is a beacon of hope for the LGBTQ+ community. According to a survey that comes from the UCLA, 25.2% of gay men and 40.4% of lesbians are victims of domestic violence from their partners. For people who are able to see somehow, even though it's a fiction story, they're able to escape their violence and find someone that loves them despite all this trauma is just amazing. There are multiple times throughout this book where Oscar questions why Cal wants him. He thinks Cal deserves someone better, he thinks that he's not worth it, etc., but Cal never backs down. Smut has become a new romance escape genre for people reading in the reading community. One such book, like I've talked about, The Devil's Mark by Lark Taylor, follows this. Not only is this book just an escape for me, but it showed me love that I never thought I could find again. Thank you.
When we were doing creative nonfiction, we were trying to I was trying to get the students to see that that a creative nonfiction piece is not just the narrative, it's not just the story, that there's a pivot. And so when Michaela comes in with a pivot towards the spiritual meaning of bird poop, it was like, yes. And then Philip, after they did their book reviews, they turned these book reviews into podcasts, so they kind of teamed up I had a friend once tell me that teaching is like parenting, and so you're not supposed to laugh when your kids do bad things, but when Philip and his group are doing their podcast, I was dying laughing so hard. So thank you, Philip. All right, our next two readers will be Hannah Christopher and Gavin Hartman.
Hello everybody. As Dr. Karshner said, my name is Hannah Christopher. I am a junior English major and I was part of Dr. Karshner's creative writing class this semester. The piece that I'm going to be reading from is my creative nonfiction piece. Like Michaela said, we were asked to write about an animal encounter. So I wrote about my experience feeding a giraffe at the zoo. And my piece, I'm going to jump into the middle of it, so I just want to give a little background, describes the connection between animals who have been raised in captivity their entire life and the people who have been provided for their entire lives, and it explores the daunting and terrifying idea of growing up and being sent out into the world. And this piece is called Surviving in the Wild. Feeding him, I thought about how that giraffe wouldn't have someone to do this for him in the wild. He'd have to go out and forage for his own food. It reminded me how many times my parents had provided food for me. Every morning, afternoon, and night, I had food on the table. What would I do when, one day, my mom wasn't there to cook me my favorite meal after a hard day? I don't even know the proper way to cut a steak because my dad has been doing it for me as long as I can remember. Deciding what I wanted to eat 3 times a day suddenly seemed like a daunting task, and I didn't even want to think about grocery shopping and the damage it would do to my bank account. This animal that stood in front of me had access to a team of doctors and veterinarians who would take care of him if he ever got sick or injured. Me? Well, I had my dad's health insurance. I'd be covered until I turned 26, but at what age does it become socially unacceptable for my mom to come back with me to the exam room and cover my copay? What was I going to do when I was suddenly expected to know my insurance information and my family's health history, and I couldn't just turn to my parents for them to rattle it off to the receptionist and the doctors? I know I'm allergic to certain medications, but only my mom knows their names. He had a safe enclosure away from any predators that he would have encountered in the wild. No one could hurt him here. My parents had provided that for me my whole life. I always had a roof over my head and clothes on my back. There was always a warm bed for me to sleep in at night. There was never a time that I wasn't safe and taken care of. At the time, I was only a few months away from entering my junior year of college. Suddenly, as internships were being shoved in my face and graduation seemed to be just around the corner, the idea of moving out and really being on my own became a harsh reality rather than this far-off idea. With any luck, in 2 years' time, I'd have a full-time job lined up and be in my own apartment, maybe in a different city or even a different state than my parents. I would really be on my own. The draft ate the last of the food from my palms, and I moved over to let another person take their turn. But before I left to wash my hands and see what the rest of the zoo had to offer, I took another second just to stand there. I thought about the reality that had just slapped me hard across the face. The giraffe and I, we were both born in captivity and used to be taken care of. I knew the giraffe, like so many other animals born and raised in zoos, could not survive on its own. I couldn't help but wonder, what chance did I have?
Hello everyone, my name is Gavin Hartman. I'm a cybersecurity major, and this is a fiction piece I wrote for Dr. Karshner's class, and I'll be reading the first page and a half or so, and it's called The Black Rain. It's about this father and his two sons immediately before and after a great calamity. Ooh. Father stood up out of the red recliner, grabbing the remote from the scratched old coffee table. A coffee mug had been sitting there since last Sunday. Anthony was relieved to see Father lift the remote to the television. He was going to turn the channel. But Father turns up the volume to full blast and throws the remote on the table. Father shifts in his chair, gingerly grasping his vodka from the side table. He takes a large sip. Our brave warriors have pushed the Red Chinese out of the island nation of Taiwan, invading the mainland. Our troops are expected to reach Shanghai by the end of the week, and then to Beijing, which is expected to fall by the end of the month. In Europe, the Russians have steamrolled Ukraine and eastern Poland. The city of Poznan is the new eastern frontier. Images from the city reveal that it has been largely reduced to rubble. These images may be disturbing to some viewers. The television flashes. Troops on both sides have dug out trenches west and east of the S-11, now just a death walk. A scorched blacktop with the occasional burnt-out car. The city burns behind the eastern trench. Images of men running onto the S-11 to fight and die in minutes. Anthony remembers learning about trench warfare. He almost asked Father if these were images from World War I, but he knew better. Father stood up once more, finishing his vodka in a few swallows. He stumbles around the couch, placing a firm hand on his son's shoulder, and walked back to the wooden stairs of the cellar. Bright static light emanates from below, and the sound of ruckus erupts from the cellar. Sounds neither familiar nor unfamiliar. The sounds of uncompassionate industrial building, as if their basement was transformed into some sort of metal factory, like the great steel factories reopened in Pittsburgh. The sound of wood falling to the freezing concrete ground. The television continues with this cacophony of war footage. Jeremy's eyes are glued to the screen, unable to look away, but too frightened of what he's watching. Anthony grabs his brother by the hand, pulling him up the stairs to his room. Go to bed, he says. Oh, I'm scared, his brother says. Just go to bed. I'll sit in the corner chair with you until you go to sleep, yeah? Jeremy runs and jumps into bed. His room walls are decorated with spaceships and stars. Anthony settles in the corner chair, an old rocking chair in his brother's room. A space-themed blanket covers the headrest. Saturn and its rings are orbited by a red and white spaceship. He waits for his brother to fall asleep. The crickets outside the window grow loud, like the drum of war on the television. He stares up at the glow in the dark stars on the ceiling, feeling himself getting whisked to space, to another planet. Anthony's drift off to sleep and slides into a dream of space. A dream he has had for the past year, drifting through the cold dead of space. Forever alone, but hopeful. He drifts to another planet, just as green and blue as Earth. Thank you.
Hannah also wrote a fantastic bit of grit lit that involved obsession, murder, and a metal detector, it was a great story. And Gavin, the piece that he read originally was a bit of cosmic horror, and it was very complicated and very well done. And then Gavin came up after class one day and he said, "What if I just took out the scary voice and just did something else?" And it's that instinct of a writer to be able to completely blow up your own piece and almost start over again. I was deeply impressed. So I can't say enough about these writers I worked with. I'm very excited about them. But anyway, our next readers will be Luke Conte and Mia Recker.
Hey gang, thanks for coming. So I'm Luke. I'm a senior UX UI major, so that's user experience interface design, if you don't know what that is. I was also in Dr. Karchner's creative writing class, and this is my animal encounter. It is titled Creative Nonfiction. Too cold and too young to carry a gun, I followed my dad and my older brother as just a spectator. Maybe that had something to do with my boredom and lack of interest in continuing our outing. Why be so cold and so uncomfortable if I can't even shoot anything? I asked my dad if we could go back maybe 2 or 3 times, and expectedly his response was just a little longer each time. I didn't believe him. The excursion was bigger than myself. There were multiple people involved and the stakes were high. It's a big deal, but I couldn't recognize it at the time. And if you didn't think that deer hunting was a big deal, then you're probably not from Western PA. So the moment broke. Time slowed as a buck 3 times the size of me leapt from my right to my left. I couldn't believe how close it was, and even more shockingly, how none of us had seen it up until it made its dash. I don't even remember where my brother and my dad were positioned in relation to me, but in that moment, the deer and I were in a shockingly similar place. We were both unable to do anything about what would happen next. Within just a few seconds, the .308 Winchester round sitting patiently in my dad's rifle, cold and anxious, found its way tearing through the flesh of the deer, of whom I had just felt acquainted with for that brief moment. He had flipped over onto himself, tripped by a fallen tree as his body shut down. Had a part of myself died with that deer? I had never witnessed death in front of me at that point, and not to have only witnessed, but in turn to have been an active participant in, or in the very least, an accessory to the fact, was a bizarre experience for me at 10 years old. What we had done was not illegal, immoral, or wrong, but it did give me a sense and appreciation for the life that exists around us. It was particularly cold on that winter morning, and I was particularly young enough that I didn't really appreciate what I was doing and the freedom in which I had to do it. I remember the pain coming from deep within my boots. My feet were shockingly cold. We hadn't seen anything move in our 4 hours out in the winter elements. No squirrels running through the trees, no rabbits plowing through the snow, just the eerie silence of hibernating forest under a blanket of insulating frozen rain. But now that deer sat in front of us, the energy was restored for the group, and we were thankful for it. I wasn't cold anymore. My dad, my brother, and I celebrated, and rightfully so, a frigid, painful morning that had been brought to a close with a fresh kill. The deer would supply jerky for months, a nice treat for the work put in that morning. In the end, the stillness of the wintry woods, I understood my place in the intricate web of life surrounding us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mia. I'm also in Dr. Karchner's class for creative writing. And today I'm going to read my fiction piece. So we were supposed to pick a news article, and I chose a Florida man story of how this guy tried to make an inflatable hamster wheel and get across the Atlantic Ocean. He did not make it, and neither will my character. So basically the story is this guy is stuck in his own hamster wheel that is his head. He does not know that, but I'm going to read the first page of that. Fuck it, I'm going. The plan. I also have a plan. I need to have a plan. Step 1, I need to get out. How do I get out, you may ask? This is how. I managed to take some extra sheets from other people stuck in here with me and hide them in my room. I'll be here. After that, I need to tie all my sheets together and hang them from the window so I can climb down. I think I'm only on the 3rd floor, so it shouldn't be that bad of a drop. Step 2, I need to get over the fence. I remember that there was a table outside, and I'll just move the table to get height and climb over it. Step 3, when I'm over the fence, I'll make my way to the beach, and there I'll construct my boat. This is no ordinary boat, no. This is my hamster wheel. I set aside all these buoys and other plastics just for this instant. Then I will make it across the Atlantic Ocean and be free. Simple. It's dark outside, and I'm waiting for roll call. They already turned those bright fluorescent lights out, so where are they? Where are the guards? Why are they late? This is going to destroy my plan. I have to wait for them. 5 minutes have gone by. 10 minutes have gone by. A half an hour has gone by. I don't understand. How come no one is here? Where is the guard? I didn't hear anything, so I just waited. I sat in my bed and waited. I decided to just go to bed. What was I supposed to do? Where was I supposed to go? All I can do is sleep. My eyes shoot open as I'm trying to get up. I hear a woman screaming. Now, I've heard some screams before, and this was something I've never heard. This scream was so ear-piercing, I had to stop what I was doing just to listen. I don't know if it was curiosity or fear that froze me, but I stayed still. I listened to more of her screams, but then it stopped. I heard footsteps. They were slowly approaching the door, almost as if they were trying to be quiet. I have a small window on my door, and my eyes were glued to that window, trying to catch a glimpse of who or what is approaching. The footsteps kept slowly creeping up. I felt a breath of air catch in my throat as my heart kept pounding in my chest. I waited there in bed, frozen with fear, when I saw it. A black shadow figure appeared in the window. My eyes were locked with whatever that thing is. It had these red, beady eyes looking like they were staring into my soul. Surrounding the eyes is this black mist. I think it's the body, but I can't make it out. I try to blink, but my eyes feel as if they're being held open. I'm paralyzed. I can't move. Panic is setting in, and my heart is beating faster. Bump, bump. The door handle starts to twist. Bump, bump. It doesn't open. My chest is rising and falling in quick breaths. Bump, bump. The handle starts to twist the opposite way. I hear it. Bump, bump. The door makes a long creak as it opens. Chills run down my spine. Bump, bump. The door swings open. Nothing. When that door opens, there is no one there. I let out a sigh of relief. I can finally blink. My eyes sting from holding them open for so long. I get out of bed and make my way to the door. It's closed. It was just open. How did it close? My hand hovers over the handle, too scared to see if it's open. I retract it and head to the window. Daytime. I love the daytime. I try to look for birds as I always do. There are none today. I miss hearing them chirp. Thank you.
Luke also wrote a really fantastic piece of dystopian fiction with a twist at the end. So, and what I liked about Mia and Michaela both, their fiction pieces took something incredibly ridiculous and literal, you know, like some fool in an inflatable hamster wheel. And Michaela's about a guy who sold paintings of just blank canvases, and turned them into these really dark psychological explorations of the mind. And so again, I'm very proud of my students. But anyway, our last two readers tonight will be Mackenzie Hill and then Madeline Resende.
So tonight I'm going to be reading something I wrote for my screenwriting class. So these are my roommates, or my henchmen, as I like to call them. This is Tony and this is Emma, and they're going to be like the characters in my screenplay, so it's like easier to understand. It's something we do in our class. So I wrote a horror comedy, and it's called Bugs and Blood, and just a log line so you guys kind of understand what it's about, since we're just going to read a little excerpt. It's a mismatched group of college students must set aside their differences and work together to defeat a swarm of invasive insects that has taken over their campus. Maggie hangs up on Aunt Fiona and pockets her phone. She turns to continue walking when she sees something strange. A small swarm of unfamiliar insects is circling down from the sky. They have a red head and 2 wings with black spots. Students are pulling out their phones to record.
Yo, look at this. What are they?
Maggie walks closer to where the students are crowding around the insects and peeks through the crowd. The male student who spoke is in the center of the insects, recording with his phone.
This is sick. Maybe you shouldn't be standing so close. Shut up, Sarah. What do you know anyway? Watch this. Watch this.
The male student reaches out to grab an insect, and all the insects freeze midair. All the students in the crowd take a step back except for Maggie. She is now at the front of the crowd.
What the?
The insects suddenly attack the male student. They latch onto his skin. He screams and thrashes in the grass. Everyone in the crowd scrambles to leave except for the female student who knows the male student. She pulls out her phone and calls the police.
Hello? 911? Insects are attacking my friend. Please, please hurry. Oh my god.
The male student's screams get louder and then suddenly stop. It is dead silent besides the insects buzzing. The male student stops thrashing and the insects disperse. Maggie approaches the male student's unmoving body. The female student is sobbing in the background. Maggie crouches beside this male student and touches his shoulder. The male student suddenly jolts and sits up. He looks completely unharmed except for some shallow cuts. Maggie staggers back.
Damn, I hate bugs.
Thank you.
Hi, friends. My name is Maddie Restinetti. I'm a second-year transfer student here at RMU. I'm a member of the Interdisciplinary Studies program, where I'll graduate this next semester with a 4-year degree in writing, literature, and education, as well as minor degrees in education and psychology. The piece I'd like to open with today is one I wrote at my previous university, but revised and refreshed since I've moved here. It was published in Duquesne University's literary journal entitled Lexicon in their fall 2021 edition. It is entitled Glass-Bodied Girls. Glass-bodied girls can't keep secrets because you can always see through them. They can't pour their hearts out because they only know how to be transparent. Glass-bodied girls can't trip up because if they fell, they'd self-destruct. They're fragile and must be handled with care. Could you care enough to respect that? Glass-bodied girls can't ever feel full because they can't risk overflowing. They can only hold so much before the pressure pops their top. In the light, they're beautiful to look at, but they can fall to pieces from the tiniest tap. And if you push them over the edge, then they'll smash into nothing. And if you took the time to look through their window pane eyes, you'd be able to see the pain in their not-so-clear minds. Did you see your image reflect on my skin? Is that why you thought this body wasn't mine? Is that why you didn't wipe away your fingerprints? Or did I just have too many others for it to be worth your time? Do you know how painful it is to be cracked and too afraid to shatter? I think that when you broke me, you thought you were doing me a favor. The blistering from glass slippers and waiting on glass escalators, never reaching the glass ceiling and washing it all down with a few sprays of Windex. You left me in a mess of shards that are too sharp to hold and too difficult to dispose of. Girls who live in glass bodies shouldn't throw stones. That's why I never learned how. But every single broken piece of me is waiting for you to come try and step on me now. Thank you. So I really had a great time writing creative nonfiction and fiction with Dr. Karshner and my classmates this semester. But I come from a really small town, and when I moved to Pittsburgh in 2019, I was so excited to be able to take advantage of all of the opportunities that were available to me for poetry. So tonight I'd like to close out with a piece from my favorite performance I've done, which was the Steel City Grand Slam in 2022, held at City of Asylum. The piece is entitled 7. 1. Pride. Chicken taken from the broil, skin crisped, wound salted, seasoned by seasoning, he waits prepared plate, set on the pedestal, praise as always, darling, tastes delicious. 2. Greed. This cake is not for eating, cried the mother of the bride, and there it stayed all night, thrown away next day in all its glory, never eaten except by the roaches that crawled to the reception. 3. Lust. Not rose petals placed on tablecloth, just a house, not a home-cooked meal. Take out if they're generous. Prayer has never worked, for me at least, and love is not an option given the circumstance. So all that's left is to eat and to try to avoid a tummy ache or worse. 4. Envy. Why has it never worked for me? 5. Gluttony. Milk, butter, eggs, cheese, bacon, raspberries, apples, ice cream, tortilla chips, salsa, potato chips, pizza rolls, ice cream, soup, pasta, pasta sauce, ramen noodles, baguette, cookie dough, Oreos, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream, 6 wrath, ice cream. The casserole dish shattered. The ceramic, now a mosaic, is spread across the tan tiles like puzzled pieces. I don't know how it happened, spoken slowly, sustaining the lie, slipping between my lips, with more purpose than the dish from my hands. With pieces too dull to cut, but taken over by red vision still, it was almost comforting. Couldn't even tell I was crying with these rose-colored lenses. 7. Sloth. It is way past dinner time now, and I have once again failed to make it from bed to kitchen. Try again later, turn over. There is no shame in microwave or the delivery guy. Thank you.
Maddie wrote a great creative nonfiction piece that was about fathers, but also had a controlling metaphor of a frog. So that was one of my favorites. And she also did a fantastic fiction piece too which ran right up to the smutty, and then she pulled back at the right time, and it was just, again, those instincts that the writers I had this semester were just amazing. So let's give them a round of applause. So to end tonight, I'd like to thank all of our readers. This was your event, your night, and I'm ridiculously proud of all of you. And I'd also like to thank my department head, Dr. Heather Pinson, for her continuing support, even as we pivot and pivot. I'd also like to thank our dean, Dr. Frank Hartle, who has been a great supporter of writing and the arts. I'd also like to thank my colleagues, Dr. Pambukian and Dr. Ruzick. I couldn't do this without you. Dr. Christine Holtz, who isn't here, but she's the one who does all of our marketing, all of our social media. And she can pump them out like magic, and I know that it's not magic, that it's a lot of work, and so thanks to her. I'd also like to thank my writing partner, Professor Megan Lucas, whose expertise in writing, publishing, and marketing have been a valuable resource to our students and the certificate. We are deeply appreciative of your willingness to share your expertise with us. And we are a community, so I'd like to thank Joe Hale and Ray Zapparoni in the back from the Academic Media Center. For recording yet another event for us. They're always eager to say yes, and their help going back, in the case of Ray, some 15 years, is always appreciated, and I'm lucky to work with both yins. And of course to Patty Thin, who's not here, but I can never thank her enough for all the things that she does behind the scenes to make all of us look good, and in my case, competent. So in closing, stick around for some cookies, talk to us about the certificates, and I would like a picture, if you, all of the people who read tonight, if you would just gather out in the, outside in the atrium. By the trees? Yeah, gather by the trees, and also if you are in Professor Lucas's class but didn't read, I would like for you to be in the picture too, so we'll all meet out there by the Christmas trees. So good luck with your finals next week, and again, thank you all for coming.